How's it going, YouTube? Coming to you today with another video, and today, guys, what the brand new is GOAT format. Now, I love GOAT format, and if you're newer to the game, or if you've just never played GOAT, I definitely recommend that you go out and go pick up a GOAT deck. I think that it's really cool because we get to play with a lot of very nostalgic cards, a lot of pre-errata cards like DMOC, which is pretty insane, being able to just go summon DMOC, add back Pot of Greed, because we all want to be able to play with things like Pot of Greed, Delinquent Duo, Graceful Charity, because in this day and age, we're just never going to get those cards back. So going back in time a little bit and playing in GOAT format is a ton of fun, and that's why we see a lot of people really enjoying things like the Edison format or even like 2014. There's just so many different formats that people really enjoyed playing, so I think that's really cool to at least get into GOAT now, because you'd be surprised how many different people actually just own GOAT. Especially if you're done with your match at like a regional, you can usually ask your opponent like, hey, do you have a GOAT deck? And usually it's a yes, and then you can sit there and play GOAT for like 20 minutes, and I think that's awesome. So I love GOAT, and I really want to share this video with you because I really want to inspire you to go ahead and pick up your own GOAT deck and start playing too, because I think this is just such a cool way to really learn a different way the game was played, because there's just so many different rules, and we'll cover some of them today. We'll go over some deck lists too that you can use, and then we'll go over exactly why I love GOAT so much. So if you haven't already checked out my sponsors over on Imperium Duelist or Dragon Shield, definitely go ahead and check them out. And then if you haven't already picked up a Where to Hand Trap playmat over on Imperium Duelist, definitely go over there, use code GGYGO10, and let's hop right on into the video. So the first thing I want to talk about is GOAT is essentially just resource management. That's what it is. So what I really find funny whenever I think about GOAT, and I'm like, well, so the whole objective of playing GOAT is to usually go like turn one, you go like T-set pass, and like that's a sufficient turn in GOAT, which is crazy, unless you're just going second with like the Dimension Fusion deck and like trying to OTK. But like usually if you just go like set pass or like set one pass, that's fine in GOAT, which is pretty crazy, because again, it's all about resource management. So the way that I look at GOAT is essentially Striker is modern day GOAT, which is something that is really funny, because I mentioned this one day and a lot of people at the same time were like, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, or people were like, yeah, I've heard that before, and I'm like, all right, cool, I'm glad to see that we all came to the same conclusion. But essentially, like, Striker, in a way, is just all about resource management and playing very minimally. And it's the same thing when you think about, like, GOAT. Like, you don't really do a whole lot, which is pretty crazy to say. But, like, you might activate, like, Pot of Greed and, like, a Graceful Charity, and then, like, set 2 back row in 1 monster, or, like, 1 back row, 1 monster, because there's other blowouts right now, or, like, Heavy Storm. And so you really want to make sure that you're just not playing into that card that everyone's playing. So I think that GOAT's really cool for that aspect, because it really teaches you how to play a lot better in a minimal situation, because GOAT always just feels like a simplified game state at all times. And again, that's where Striker just thrives, but you know, that's just my 2 cents. I think that it feels a lot like Striker in modern day. So one of the really cool rulings in GOAT is that you're allowed to fail to find a target. So let's say that you activate Thunder Dragon and you add 2 Thunder Dragon to your hand. There's no Thunder Dragon in your deck. You can use a Thunder Dragon in your hand to pitch to the graveyard for nothing. Like, you can just use it for nothing. You fail to find a target, which is pretty crazy, because the reason you'd ever want to do this is, A, you use Thunder Dragon to add 2 copies to play around things like Delinquent Duo, so it can try to hit like one of your Thunder Dragons, or if you have like Graceful Charity, you have free discards. But you also want to play around the Ghost Destroyer too, because if they go to attack and then banish 2 from your graveyard, you want to make sure that you're not leaving extra lights in there just to get banished. So you keep Thunder Dragon in your hand as long as possible. You'll pitch it every single time that you want to use like Chaos Orc or like BLS. So there's a lot of really cool options for you just to be able to fail to find a target, but this is a rule that you're allowed to do in GOAT format, which is pretty neat. Now, priority in GOAT. If you're unfamiliar with what priority is essentially is like, let's say Breaker the Magic Warrior, right? You can summon Breaker the Magical Warrior, and then you go priority get token. So essentially what that means is whenever there's an effect like a Chaos Sorcerer, the effect of the once per turn you can target one face-up monster on the field, banish it, becomes a quick effect that you have priority to use. So if you summon Chaos Sorcerer, you can go ahead and use the effect of the banish a target on the field, and then your opponent can flip Torrential Tribute. So essentially in that summon window, your effect, no matter what, becomes a quick effect as long as you're turn player. So that's definitely different from what we're used to in our format, because we don't have priority like that anymore. Like, there's still turn player priority, but it's not like priority of a summon. So that's pretty cool too to think about. Because it's the same thing as doing like Tribe Infecting Virus. You can go like normal summon Tribe and then like Tribe effect priority. So it's definitely a little different. That's essentially the basis in GOAT, is one of the most important rulings to know. So we do have a lot of old effects in GOAT too. Like I was saying earlier, DMOC, that's pretty crazy. There's a lot of different cards that are ruled different ways. Again, even like Sangan is just going to be pre-errata, so I think that's really neat to note. The next thing is going to be Exarian Universe. This was a card that got very, very popular and very hated very fast. So Exarian Universe is a card that was legal, I think, for 2 days? It was either 2 days or 2 weeks. I think it was 2 days. Because, so in GOAT, you got to realize, so there's a lot of monsters that you have to set, and they're all very low defense. And so the card that's the counterpart to Exarion is Parshath. And so that card allows you to pierce and then draw. So what the difference of these two is the fact that you can just go ahead and normal summon this and it's already gigantic. Whereas Parshath needs the additional tribute summon and it's a lot harder to bring out versus like when you have like Exarian Universe and there's 3 of it and you can just keep swinging into monsters. It got very toxic and a lot of people decided this card just needed to get banned. And within like 2 days of it being legal, it was just completely banned. So that's pretty crazy to note. So if you're ever curious about like why no one plays Exarion, this is why. It's just a lot of people hate this card. So this is just something that happened and pretty crazy to think about, to be honest. So I want to talk to you about a couple different deck lists here and what you can really expect whenever you're playing GOAT. So this is Reasoning Gate. This is probably one of the craziest decks that are available to you in GOAT, but it's also not the top 3. I would say it's like the 4th best deck. This is a deck that really does allow you to just OTK out of nowhere. Because of the fact that you have cards like Reasoning. Reasoning can mill you into things like your Sacred Cranes, which on summon allow you to draw one. You can hit Jinzo, which is pretty crazy against quite a few decks. You can hit the DMOC, and then if you milled a bunch of spells, then you can add back things like Graceful Charity or Pot of Greeds, another Dimension Fusion. Then you use your Chaos Monsters to go ahead and banish as many cards from your graveyard as possible. And then you activate Dimension Fusion, which then allows you to bring everything back. So that's pretty crazy. Again, Snatch Steal, very legal in this format. 3 Monster Gate, 3 Reasoning, Giant Trunade. There's so many different cool cards that you can play in this format that I really do like. Upstart's at 3-2, which is pretty crazy. The whole extra deck being things like Dark Balter, the Dark Fire Dragon. These are all just going to be Metamorphosis targets. You would just play an extra deck even if you don't use it, just because you don't want to really telegraph what you're playing. So like you wouldn't really use it in this scenario, but it's still important to have one. But the Thousand Eyes Restrict is probably the most notable extra deck monster for this format. It's really cool because the Thousand Eyes Restrict just does so much for you, right? Your monsters can't change battle position. Your like no monsters on the board can attack except for tier. So like there's quite a few things that you've got to be on the lookout for whenever that's on the board, and sometimes it can just be one of the best stall cards that you have if you have things like Metamorphosis off of like a GOAT. So that's also just really important to note here as well. I also think that it's cool on the side here, playing things like the Cyberstein to get into the extra deck is pretty cool. Also just because you can mill it and no one's ever going to call 2. Usually it's going to be 8 because you don't want them to get the DMOC, and then if you ever don't call 8 and they hit DMOC, make sure you're calling 8, you know? So unless you're really worried about like Jinzo, because at that point, understandable, but I'm never letting my opponent resolve DMOC at that point, right? So the next one we have here is Warrior Toolbox. Now, these next 3 are going to be the best decks of the format, like the top 3. They're all pretty interchangeable, but I would say this one and the next one are like 2nd and 3rd, and then the last one that I'm going to show you is going to be like the best deck in GOAT, at least in my opinion. So this is Warrior Toolbox. This is a really cool deck. Again, you already see like the Ghost Destroyers in the main deck. This card's just so insane in GOAT format just because of the fact that your opponent can't banish. So like they can't summon the Chaos Monsters, and then you get to banish cards from their grave as well. Pretty insane. Lots of trap cards in this deck for sure. Having cards like Donzalug, Azura Priest, and then you also have things like the Silent Swordsman to go ahead and just make sure the flip effects can activate. Very important here. And for the next deck here, we have Chaos Control. Now, this is a deck that I play. I love Chaos Control. I think this has just got to be the best deck, but I know it's not. I know there's one that's just outshining this one. But this deck is so good. It's so good. And so what I like about this, though, is my build's a little different here. I main deck the DMOC, so like it's pretty not standard. But so what's cool about this is you focus really hard on your chaos monsters, and you could still play the goats, you could play the metamorphosis, you can play a decent amount of traps, playing things like the Koichi, the Magician of Faith. It's just really cool. I like the build a lot. I think that this deck can just do a lot. Also, just being able to recur the really powerful spells here with things like Demok and Magician of Faith, just really impactful. Being able to side cards like Mind Crush, Trap, Dust Shoot is kind of insane because Mind Crush works the way that it used to, where your opponent has to reveal their hand to you. So if you have double Mind Crush and they go like Thunder Dragon, or they add in with like Rhoda in the Warrior deck, then you get a double hit, which is pretty crazy. Or if you have like Dust Shoot plus Mind Crush, then you can look at their whole hand with Dust Shoot and then rip another card out with Mind Crush too. So there's definitely a couple cool combos that you can do in this deck. But probably the better deck in this format, the best deck, would be Panda Burn. Panda Burn is the equivalent to like Chain Burn or like Mind Burn. This deck is wild, using cards like Gravity Bind so like no one can attack. So it's definitely insane. Also using cards like Injection Fairy Lily to make sure that you can get a lot of damage off, especially under Gravity Bind so nothing else can attack. So it's pretty crazy. This deck's pretty wild. But Panda Burn has definitely got to be the best deck of the format. It's pretty insane. I hope that you enjoyed today's video, though, because GOAT format is honestly just one of those formats that I feel like is really undervalued, and it's just so cool, and it's so much fun, and I really want to make sure that more people can get interested in it and really learn about what it is. So if you do end up picking up a deck, definitely let me know, and if I'm streaming, ask me if I want to play GOAT, because usually I do. So I hope that everyone has a wonderful night, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.